everyone, welcome to this week's Halton Hills housing update. So we have just movement in the market still. So looking at the numbers, Georgetown last week had 11 sales. We've been seeing like 11, 12 sales every week. That is not high, but it's definitely not low. I mean, we can see upwards and over 20 really in a really busy market. And you know, when it starts to die down, we see 3 to 5 sales. So we're sort of in that middle ground where things are moving. We did have 17 new listings, so inventory is climbing, but we also still have properties coming off the market. So there's kind of like this weird balance happening right now. And of those 11 that sold last week, 4 of them sold over asking. They were mostly in the lower price points, but just interesting to see how busy that sort of lower pocket is, and that it's still getting that bidding war activity. We're not necessarily seeing the bidding wars in the higher price points. So that's sort of where we're at with Georgetown this week. Looking at Acton, very interesting in Acton. We had 9 sales. I went back in my book because I was like, 9 sales in Acton is quite a lot. We had a week in 2022, like in that peak, I think it was April or March of 2022, where we saw 9 sales in Acton. Otherwise, we have not seen a week where we have 9 sales in Acton. So that is just, I'll call it huge. I mean, that's Acton's version of a huge week in sales. And I mean, majority of them were under that million price point. Lots of lower end stuff available in Acton. I mean, quite a few of the sales were actually under 750. So that shows you. But yeah, just a really busy sales week in Acton. There was also 7 new listings, so inventory still coming up there. Looking at Glen Williams, no sales, but 2 new listings. Limehouse had no sales and 1 new listing. The rural market saw 2 sales and 2 new listings. And then the other thing I sort of touched on earlier in the video was sort of the stuff coming off the market. So when we looked last week, we had 16 properties sort of adjust, whether they terminated, suspended, and relisted, all of that. So of those 16, 8 of them, so half of them came off the market completely and didn't re-enter. This is keeping our inventory, you know, kind of stable at the moment. When we start to see inventory climb, you know, when there's that gap between sales and new listings, we see the inventory skyrocket. But sort of the curveball is when properties come off the market, it keeps things very stable. So we had 8 properties come off the market, so we didn't see a huge jump this week in most of our inventory numbers. And then we had 6 properties reduce their price. 2 of those 6 reduced it dramatically and are now holding off offers, so we'll see how that goes. 1 of them relisted at the same price, and 1 of them relisted higher, even though they didn't have an offer night, but they relisted higher. So I don't know the strategy there, but that's sort of what happened with the sort of side listings that made some movement with their pricing and stuff this week. Now looking at active inventory, it actually remained the same this week at 198 active listings. When I did my Friday numbers, we were over 200, but we actually had quite a few sales, especially in that Acton market, reported on Monday. So that sort of softened things. Looking at Georgetown, our inventory went up from 104 to 106. So not a huge jump. Again, there was that gap, but because some properties came off the market, it sort of stayed at bay. We did have some movement and shifts in our price points though. So under 800,000 dropped from 13 to 11. That price point is very busy. I had a townhouse listing in that price point this weekend and it was very busy. Ended up with 4 offers and I would say 2 or 3 other people that were kind of ready to offer but didn't end up pulling the trigger. So that under 800,000 price point, it's hard to get something. It's hard to get something decent there. So it's very busy when you have a good listing. 800 to $1 million is up from 19 to 21. 21 is a lot in that price point, especially because it's usually our price point that, you know, it's our kind of in that pocket of our opening price point freehold. We usually see a ton of movement. So to see 21 things available there is interesting. It should start to maybe impact prices negatively on things like the Delrex bungalows and, you know, semis and freehold townhouses. 1 to 1.5 million is up from 32 to 36. So that price point is definitely climbing, but we're seeing a surprising amount of sales over that million mark. 1.5 million plus is down from 40 to 38. Just still very high. Like, I mean, these people are wanting over that 1.5. There's just not 38 buyers that are willing to spend like anywhere near $2 million in town in Georgetown. So That price point, I would not anticipate a ton of stuff moving in that price point, even when the market's getting, busier. Acton this week is down because they had so many sales, from 35 to 31 active listings. That's still very high for Acton, but I mean, there's stuff moving, and the far majority of it is under $1 million. So some good offerings in Acton right now. Glen Williams is up from 8 to 10 active listings. 10 is a lot of listings in the Glen. They mostly are higher price points. So again, just not a lot of buyers willing to spend that kind of money. So not a lot moving in the Glen. Limehouse is up from 2 to 3. The rural market this week remained the same at 47 active listings, so still sitting extremely high. The interesting thing with rural is we actually have 4 properties under $1 million. It is very rare that we see rural properties under $1 million. We might have 1 here and there, but we have 4 available, and we have a bunch available under 1.5. So that's sort of a shift for the rural market. I mean, we are saturated with inventory levels, but to see 4 properties available under $1 million in the rural area is kind of a surprise. So overall, looking at the numbers, I mean, our market is still moving. We're not in a point where things feel dead. We're seeing quite a few sales. Like, we had 22 sales in all of Halton Hills last week. That's a solid week in Halton Hills. So the overall consensus, the buyers are out. They are looking to make moves. We're just not seeing, as we get up in that price point, we're not seeing a lot of activity. But the real question is going to be where our inventory levels sort of land by the end of the month. They stayed at bay this week. Again, 8 properties came off the market. But, if those hadn't come off, we'd be over that 200 mark. So just an interesting sort of mix of busy and bidding wars on certain things, and then other sellers like exiting the market because they're not getting what they wanted. So weird times. I'm really hopeful that we're going to see an interest rate drop in the coming weeks at the next announcement in June, and that will hopefully refuel the market and help to bring this inventory level down. But we're going to have to wait and see. So I will be back next Tuesday. Have a great week, everyone.